Well, hello and welcome, and let's get into the writing process as a creative process. And welcome to our first voice thread. I'm so excited to embark on this journey with you, and I hope it's as magnificent as I think it's going to be. So let's get started. When we're thinking about the writing process, the first thing we want to do is be a little bit introspective and ponder and consider a few different questions about what it is what do we write? When do we write? Why do we write? How do we write? You can see all those questions there. And so this is one of those spaces where you might want to share some of your answers. And particularly what I'm interested in is what makes writing, even academic writing, a creative act. And then what do you like about writing? What do you dislike about writing? You can answer any of those questions. I particularly want to focus a little bit on the what makes writing a creative act, especially because I think when we think about academic writing, we think it has to be very stodgy, and we have to use $100 words, and that nobody understands and has to have a dictionary to look up. But really, our writing we do want it to be a formality to it. We also want there to be an engagement to it. There needs to be clarity, but it can also be creative. And aren't we also creating from nothing our ideas, right? And we're putting them in our own sentence structure, our own sentence length, our own descriptive language, our own ideas and metaphors and similes and examples and explanation and ideas. Isn't that creative? So I'm curious to hear what you think. So before we even start delving into the writing process, I like us to think about writing in general. Some of us like it more than others. Some of us dislike it more than others. And I think we can all agree it's a skill. And the more we practice it, the more we engage with it, the better we become at it. And the other thing I think we can all agree on is writing takes time, doesn't it? It's not something that we can just do real fast if we want to do it well and if we want to communicate our ideas completely. So, when we're looking at the writing process, there are different stages of writing. And one stage is discover, where we are thinking about our assignment, when we're thinking about the piece of writing, when we're going to ask some questions about it and come to understand a few things about the writing. And so, or the assignment, or whatever we're choosing to write. And so please take a look at some of these questions that you should be able to ask and answer as you approach, particularly in this class, but I would say with any piece of writing. It's really important to understand particularly what's being asked of you. What are the guidelines, the requirements, the things, the must-haves in order to succeed for the assignment? What's also really important is what's the purpose? What's the goal? Are you writing an argument? Are you writing an analysis? Is it a causal argument? Is it a comparison contrast analysis? So you want to know what your purpose is so that you can be more precise about how you achieve your goal. You also want to know who's your intended audience. Because we're going to write much differently if we're writing to a bunch of scholars or to a bunch of kindergartners. So we want to keep in mind who our intended audience is, because we will choose our words, we will choose our examples accordingly. And then don't forget, as much as you have essay guidelines, essay prompts, I will use those words interchangeably, but they pretty much mean the same thing. It's the guidelines tell you how to go about it and what is being asked of you, and the prompt is prompting you to write. But there's an element you're always going to be able to choose with any assignment in this class. What do you want to write about? And once you have your answers to these questions for under discovery, it's time to think. And then the other thing is, when you're thinking, you're discovering, you're starting to get into your invention portion where you decide how you're going to approach the piece of writing and what you're going to write about. So I have another question. Here's a place where you can pause and answer if you'd like. How, when, where do I do my best thinking? How, when, where do you do your best thinking? So please take a moment and respond to the question and to each other. Next, we move into invention. We invent. So you understand what the writing guidelines, the prompt is asking of you. You've determined and identified what your purpose is. You know you've identified and chosen your intended audience. And pretty much for our class and our purposes and here, it's each other. So you want to think about college scholars, educators, learners. That's who you are writing to. So people will have a variety of experience and knowledge with the different topics you might be writing about. Invention. So when you're inventing, this is where every idea is a good idea. Let your subconscious rule. There's no judgment. Every word, idea, feeling, memory, image is significant. Be free, uncensored. Allow hidden thoughts to be exposed. There's a number of different invention strategies. You're going to read about them. I'm not going to go into too much detail for each of them, but what I would, we will practice them throughout the rest of the semester. So that's when I'll go into a little bit more detail when I present them in different modules. But you can draw. You might be familiar with some of these. You might have used some of these. Free write, focused free write, which is a little different from a free write. Brainstorm, list, cluster, map, and web are sometimes all referring to the same sort of thing, but some people call them by different names. Journal, outline. So now here's another spot where you can go ahead and pause the voice thread and share. Are there any invention strategies that you use that aren't listed here? Please share. And have you used any of these invention strategies to some degree of success? So share which you think work best for you and why. Thank you. Next, we go to drafting. Now it's writing time. We're going to stay in this uncensored, free, no judgment space when we do our first draft. And notice something that I just mentioned, first draft, not final draft, first draft. If we are truly engaging in the writing process in a way that helps us to truly unlock our ideas and come to a greater understanding about what we think and what we want to say and what we want to prove, then we really need to allow ourselves the time to write more than one draft. So just write. Just let the ideas pour out of your mind through your hand, whether it's on a pen and paper, whether it's typing onto a computer, whether it's using your fingers on your phone, just write. If you have a thesis statement, Great. Organize all your ideas around that idea. If you don't have a thesis statement, go ahead and just write. And as your ideas are unfolding, you'll find as you get into the thinking and the writing and the flow that you will start to find your direction. And what I also find is when folks don't often start with a thesis statement, they end up in their conclusion with a thesis statement. So take a look there after you've allowed yourself to freely draft this first essay. And don't forget, you will have the revision portion of the writing process to come back and reevaluate things. But most importantly, this is really significant, especially if you're someone who suffers from writer's block. Try not to judge yourself with these early drafts. This is just another way for you to let your ideas flow and to get your ideas out. And once they're out and on the paper, then you can come with that conscious mind and organize them. And you'll see, ding, 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 more than one draft is highly recommended. You'll find that when you have more than one draft, your writing will improve. Now we move to number 4, revision, revise. Before you start the revision process, take some time out. Now notice what I'm describing has many steps, and that takes time. And so you don't want to wait until the day that an assignment's, the paper's due, or even the day before. You want to start a few days before so that you can allow yourself that invention incubation period, that you can allow yourself the discovery time, and you're not rushed and you're not anxious and you're not having to hurry through things and miss things, right? So once you draft that first draft, walk away from it. If you can, take a day. At least take an hour, a half hour, just so that the ideas can sit and that you can come back to it refreshed. And this is where you let the judging commence. Here's where your conscious mind dominates, and you're going to re-see, you're going to rethink, you're going to reevaluate, you're going to rewrite your ideas. You're going to fine tune your ideas until you mold and bend and stretch them to be exactly what you want them to be, so that they convey your ideas exactly as you intend. So here's where you delete ideas where there's no consistency or the ideas don't relate. You're going to rearrange and reorganize. You're going to put like ideas near like ideas, and here's where you'll also seek to have cohesiveness, include those transitions between paragraphs. You'll want consistency, make sure that you're using parallel structure, and cohesiveness. Everything is together. You'll also want to add, perhaps you'll need to add more examples or quotations, or develop your thoughts more. Perhaps you didn't follow up a quotation with explanation and commentary, so you want to do that here. This is where you are making sure that everything makes sense, that it flows, that it's developed, that you have sound reasoning. And what you'll find is you might need to go back to the invention strategies to help you develop your ideas more. And that's okay. We'll talk about the fact that this process isn't linear in just a moment. Then we get to the final act. Here's when we make sure that everything is proofread. We edit. We make sure that our grammar, our punctuation, our MLA documentation style and quotation style is all correct. We check for clarity, make sure that our sentences make sense, that we are varying our sentence structures, that we are correcting any errors with misused words or punctuation. Proofing is caring. It shows that you care about your own writing, your own work, your own ideas. Often what will happen is if a work has too many grammatical or punctuation errors, it interrupts the flow of the ideas and makes it difficult for your reader to be able to glean what it is you're trying to say. So take this extra time to do an edit and a proofread. For an editing tip, I don't know if you practice this or not. If you don't, please do. Read your essays out loud. Our minds will fill in the blank. Our minds will put words there that aren't there because our mind wants them to be there or intended them to be there. But when we actually read the words on the page, our ear can hear if our syntax is off, if something sounds funny. That usually signifies that maybe there's a grammar issue or a punctuation problem, or we missed a word entirely. And then we can also see more if we're using homonyms incorrectly. So I strongly encourage you to read your work out loud. And then finally, we publish. Here's where we share our work with others, whether we're reading it to someone or we're letting someone else read our work. This is when we display our work proudly. We hand it in, we submit it, and this is another form of publication. And once it's published, we can brush off our shoulders and feel a sense of accomplishment that we were able to communicate and convey whatever it was that we had to say clearly, concisely, and beautifully. Now, one last thing I want to share before we finish up our discussion about the writing process. You can jump around. You don't have to. This is not a linear process. I like to view it more circular, and you can move forward and backward wherever you need to be. Some of us jump in at different numbers. Some of us jump in at number 2. We go straight to drafting. Some of us spend a lot of time in invention and skip discovery. Some of us just go straight to the final draft. Some of us skip revision and go straight to editing. Some of us skip editing. But know that you can move throughout the different steps and you can go back and revisit. So especially when you're in your revision process, if you find, you know what, I didn't develop that idea enough. I think I need a quotation for support. I need to corroborate that claim. So you might need to go back and do a little more research or do a little bit more invention and thinking to get to the examples or the ideas to help you fully flesh out what it is you're trying to say. Now for the last question I'd like to pose for you is please share a little bit about what your process looks like. Do you go through all of these steps, 1 through 6? Do you jump in at different spots and jump out at different spots? Take a moment to share a little bit about what your process is. I look forward to engaging with you more in the discussion, and I hope you find using VoiceThread really enriching. So I'll be conversing with you again soon.